all your facilities blown up in the Middle East. You had to evacuate the Muwafaq Salti Air Base in the Middle East. Like, what do you mean you want more? If the cards were in Iran's hands at the negotiation period before the implementation of the MOU, Iran has even more cards in their hands now than they did then. There's a lot of reports coming out right now that Trump called off what was set to be the largest attack on Iran at any point that we've seen last night. Apparently he called it off, and there's over 100 air refueling tankers in Israel right now preparing for this operation, but Trump called it off. Now, I don't necessarily believe this whole idea that he called it off, right? Because let's just reflect a little bit. Let's remember, let's look back at recent history. Do you remember how many times when it was leading up to the moment in which they actually went in and did the raid, which resulted in the kidnapping of President Maduro in Venezuela? We heard from the Trump administration, like, oh yeah, we were going to do it last night, but we called it off. There are so many variables at play. So whether or not a specific night is good or not for a specific operation. Now, I'm no military expert, but even something as simple as the weather, something as simple as the clarity of the air on said night, these things all impact whether or not a decision moves forward. So what I'm saying is that, and definitely what we've learned from the Maduro raid, is that when the U.S. has an operation like this, a large-scale operation, they will have 5 or 7 different dates over the span of a month and a half that they will sit with and say, okay, we're going to move along. We're going to see. We can do it on any one of these days. We're going to be prepared any one of these days for the operation, and we'll see how things go, and we'll see how the weather is. We'll see how the general diplomatic situation is, and we'll move forward, What we can say for certain is that the diplomatic situation has not gotten better. It has only deteriorated. Iranian strikes on all these bases have only increased. We saw the attacks that resulted in the unaliving of 3 American soldiers this week. We see they've had to evacuate 2 of their main bases in Jordan this week. Like, everything is reaching this crescendo, this fever pitch right now. So the idea that Trump just sat there and he's like, actually, sorry, you guys, just call it off. We're going to go back and offer them one more time. They offered Iran, according to the reports, 3 offers this week, each one begging for a ceasefire, begging for a return to the memorandum of understanding. Iran rejected each one because why would they accept any of that? And apparently now this is what we're moving into the 4th iteration of this, but this time it's a public affair. This time it's not being done secretly through the new Iraqi prime minister, Mr. Aziadi, whatever his name is. This is a public affair now. President Trump postponed a major attack on Iran last night in hopes of returning to negotiations. Trump now hopes they are going to return to the MOU after the second failed attempt to take control of the Strait of Hormuz. Wow. Would you look at that? He wants to return to the MOU. The MOU, which on day 1 of its implementation, Trump violated like 3 of the different points. The most important point was the inclusion of Lebanon. And within like 6 days of the MOU, maybe even less, of the MOU going into effect, Israel murdered how many Lebanese within a 10-minute period? Was it like 1,000 people they murdered in Lebanon within 10 minutes? And that was point number uno. Within 10 minutes, they murdered over 1,000 people. And he thinks that Iran wants to go back to this. What about no new sanctions? The U.S. was supposed to, per the deal, remove sanctions from Iran during this window of the MOU's implementation. They added new sanctions that were not there prior to the start of the MOU. They added new sanctions on Iran. What about the opening up of $6 billion for Iran? Yeah, that was never going to happen. That was a silly idea. Frankly, I think it's a stupid idea, even if it did happen. Not going to get into the details as to why, but that money would only be open and usable by certain people in Iran. And I think it may create somewhat of a power imbalance. But anyways, that never happened. What about the memorandum of understanding saying that Iran was going to control and regulate the Strait of Hormuz? Not only did they continue each and every day to put out statements saying Iran cannot charge tolls on the Strait of Hormuz, they literally started to try and run ships through the Omani route. They started to bomb Bandar Abbas to try and make it so Iran could not continue to target those ships that the U.S. Navy was trying to escort through the Omani route to the Strait of Hormuz. List goes on and on and on. Why on earth would Iran say, yes, sir, let's go back to this? And, oh, wait, sorry, I forgot. It gets even better. Because not only do they want to return to the Strait of Hormuz, this time, Trump is demanding that Yemen be included into the, not only do they want to return to the Memorandum of Understanding, this time they want to include Yemen into the Memorandum of Understanding and ask for a ceasefire there as well. Because Trump, frankly, I think everybody did not like what happened in Saudi Arabia last night, which we're going to be talking about. Saudi Aramco got hit hard. And I don't really know what Saudi Arabia was trying to do to defend themselves. They launched some Greek-supplied air defense system. Yeah, that didn't work out well. Who could have guessed, right? So Yemen's ballistic missiles and drones, of which they launched like 5 different barrages, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe more. They got through and they blew up Saudi Aramco's the fifth largest oil refinery in the entire country. It puts out 400,000 barrels of oil each and every day. And that was just like one night, just a little taste. All Saudi Arabia had to do was say, we are going to end the siege on Sana'a International Airport. That's all they had to do. Right? So they said, we're going to shut down the Bab el-Mandeb. Saudi Arabia said no. And they tried to, they tried to run through it. That didn't work out. And then they got Saudi Aramco blown up. That didn't work out well. Now Trump says that Yemen must be included. So Trump is not only asking for a return to the MOU. This is important because he didn't implement any of the promises in the MOU. And the MOU, I'm looking at this not as an Iranian. I'm just like a third-party person looking at this. So take my opinion for whatever it's worth. I didn't think the MOU was really a good deal for Iran. But even then, what do we have? We have Trump saying, no, we want more. Bruh, you're you want more? How could you want more? You failed to open the Strait of Hormuz during the duration of the MOU. You bombed like random factories and metal scrapyards to try and stop Iran from safeguarding the Strait of Hormuz. And then you got all your facilities blown up in the Middle East. You had to evacuate the Mulfaq Salti Air Base in the Middle East. Like, what do you mean you want more? If the cards were in Iran's hands at the negotiation period before the implementation of the MOU, Iran has even more cards in their hands now than they did then. How could you ask for more? It's just delusional. It's not even insane is not an appropriate word to describe this. Crazy, no. It is pure delusions. It's like when they start saying all this stuff about Trump being a dementia patient or whatever, it's like they might be onto something, actually. So, they want to make Yemen part of this deal, blah, 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 blah. The U.S. had offered apparently 3 different offers to Iran this week through Qatar, Iraq, and Pakistan. They offered these. When I say offer, they begged for a ceasefire. Iran rejected it each and every time. So now they're, as a last stand, they're making it a public offer, a public kneeling before the supreme leader begging for a ceasefire. And I don't think it's going to go well. I will tell you that Oman, I guess, is mediating this between the United States and Iran. I don't know how long this mediation effort is going to last, though. I guess we'll find out maybe tonight or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. But I don't know how this is going to last because Trump's real concern here is to open the Strait of Hormuz. And that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen until Iran understands that the U.S. has actually been pushed to the brink and forced to accept defeat. You know, it's not going to happen. And we got this news about 2 hours ago. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says Iran will determine shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz within 1 month under Article 5 of a memorandum of understanding, with any changes requiring Iranian consultation based on security and navigation safety. So what does that mean? Does that mean that Iran cares about the memorandum of understanding? No, I don't think it does. What it means is Trump wants to open the Strait of Hormuz, and he's begging for that through Qatar, through Pakistan, through Iraq, on Twitter now, through the media outlets. He's begging for the Strait of Hormuz to be open, and through Oman even. And then Iran just replies and says, like, well, we're going to be implementing the final protocols for the Strait of Hormuz this month, so thank you very much, and good day, sir. That's what they said. So I guess Trump's hope is squandered. I don't think he has any real hope. I don't think he's that delusional that he would actually hope that Iran would like return to the MOU and bring Yemen into the deal. I mean, that's just insane. And a lot of people in Iran don't think that either. They think, okay, he's just like buying time for a more appropriate date to launch this quote unquote mother of all attacks against Iran. You see the news, you know what's going on. This was the clearest indicator of all, in tandem with the placement of U.S. naval assets in the region before the war began, that a war is about to start. And right now, what do we have? We have the same exact hallmark, same exact red flags being waved high from Tel Aviv. 90 to 100 air refueling tankers are stationed across the Middle East. I should say over 100. 90 are stationed in Israel. That's what they're going to do. They're just going to start bombing again. We're going to return to the war 100,000 million %. New York Times reports, U.S. is considering sending thousands of ground troops to secure Iranian nuclear site and recover enriched uranium. The operation would require thousands of ground troops to secure sites, clear booby traps, support construction teams, and establish a defensive parameter before a small special operations team recovers the uranium. I don't think that's going to go well, but, you know, why not? Why not? Iran does say, come closer. Why not? You know, try it. Let's see how this goes. By the way, if you know someone in the U.S. military, encourage them to, in their contract, consciously object. It's well within their legal right. And, you know, these guys on these special ops teams, they, according to Sean Ryan, they're all smart enough to know that they're fighting a war for Israel right now, and this isn't anything they should be a part of. I don't know why you'd want to be a part of this. Anyways, let's not forget, by the way, what I said about the Al-Fa Peninsula on our last stream. Iraq's Al-Fa Peninsula. Why do we think Iran is hitting Kuwait so hard? 82nd Airborne Division, 10,000 of whom, they're somewhere in West Asia right now. Iran's hitting Kuwait pretty hard. The Al-Fa Peninsula would be the easiest way to get into Iran, if you're looking at a map. It's been the site of many a battle in recent history. And also, Iran is building up their defenses on the border there right now. So I think they expect something's coming. So we'll see what happens there. That would be a suicide mission. Multiple European airlines have canceled their Saturday morning and weekend flights to Israel in anticipation for a massive escalation with Iran, per Israeli Channel 12. The Iranian government sources assess the silence of the past 15 hours is a prelude to the intensification of attacks on Iran. Yes, since the morning hours, there's been no attacks on Iran, which is very unique. You're to look at the strike patterns over the last 2-3 weeks. U.S. Selective Service System plans a computer simulation to test how it would carry out a national mobilization of American manpower months before the government begins automatically registering men age 18 to 26 for the draft in December. And icing on the cake here, this was just moments ago, about, an hour ago. Trump, in an interview with LCI reporter, said, if we don't get 100% of what we demand from Iran, I am definitely considering a full return to fighting. I think we're going to see that sooner than any of us could expect. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or Give Sin Go. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.